This is the fourth and final episode in our series, Good News. We started a few weeks back and we said, look, you watch the TV, you listen to the radio, you read your papers, and there seems to be nothing but bad news. If only somebody could give us some good news. Good news about how we can live our life today. And so far we've looked at incidents in the life of Jesus where he met people like you and me, ordinary men and women, and he brought them good news. He met a woman who was widowed. She'd lost her husband. She was wondering if there was any good news for her, because now her only son was dead. He brought good news for her and for you. We met a young man who was the rudest man in the world, and he'd offended his father, he'd gone off. Jesus brought good news for that young man and for you. And then last week we looked at the story of Nicodemus, a great man, one of the leaders of his country, one of the top men, academically very, very intelligent. He was a professor in the university. In terms of wealth, he was very comfortably off, just like you and I are. In our world of Britain today, we are so rich that we waste our money on trinkets and watching things on the internet. But for him, he was a wealthy man, and he was also a very powerful man, one of the leaders of the country, and he was a very religious man. In every way, he was top of the pile. And Jesus brought good news for him because he knew he needed something more. Well, this week we go to the other end of the pile. We've looked at ordinary people. We've looked at someone who was a very great and big man as far as this world's concerned. And then this week, we go right to the other extreme. Whoever you are, whatever you've done, whatever your past is, this woman is further down the pile of life's good things than you are. It's a very hot, sunny day, and Jesus and the disciples are getting weary. They're walking through an area of the country that they don't particularly like. It's enemy territory. They're not at war, there is no war, this is the Pax Romana, there's peace in the whole world for 30 years around the birth and life of Jesus. But this moment, they're in hostile territory, let's say. It's one of those areas where they're not quite sure about things. And Jesus decides to sit down at a well, and the disciples set off into the local town and go to get something to eat. And as Jesus is sitting there, a woman comes to draw some water from the well. They didn't have taps in those days. They had a well, and she had a bucket. She would put the bucket down into the well and draw up some water. And she'd feed her flocks or take some home, whatever, do a cookie with it, drink with it. I'm not convinced that she did a lot of washing by the sounds of things. She was there in the middle of the day, at the hottest part of the day. It's a very strange thing to do. She's one of those people who's had what you and I would describe as a hard life. You know, when you see somebody and they put them on these TV shows, don't they? 10 years younger. And they bring them on and you sit there and you go, oh, look at her, poor old soul. Oh. And then they ask everybody to guess how old they are. And you're sitting there thinking, she's 70 if she's a day. And you think, poor old lass. And she's no teeth and she's all wrinkled. And they say, and how old are you? She says, I'm 45. And you say, never. Oh, I look well compared to her, don't I? That's why we watch those programs. I look well compared to her. Her hair's all scratty. Ruth always says they do the teeth, they do the hair, and knock 10 years off anybody. Well, she comes and she's had a hard life. She's one of those people that looks old before her days. And you've met that sort of lady. You've known that sort of a person. And she's had a lot of men in her life. And really, ladies, you know this. If you have a lot of men in your life, you do age quickly. It creates an awful lot of worry. She's had 5 husbands. She's been married to 5 men. And right now she's living with a fella. And she's expecting that he's going to go sometime as well. She doesn't know whether it'll be tomorrow or 3 years from now. But she's not really expecting it to last long. She's making the most of it while she can. She has issues. And that's what we'd say today, isn't it? She's got issues. You know, she drinks a bit. Well, actually, she drinks a lot. She's out late at night, and she likes men, but she's always picking the wrong ones. Oh, she can't pick them. She has such bad luck with men. Why doesn't she just give up? You would, wouldn't you? You wouldn't risk 5. And now she's on to a 6th one. She's probably a bit depressed. Notice she doesn't get there till lunchtime. Normally, in 1st century Israel, normally the way you do it, you get up on a morning, it's hot, sunny climate, you know, when you go on your holidays to Spain and Greece, it's like that. And on a morning, the sun comes up and it wakes you up. And normally speaking, you wake up and you go and you get your water before it gets too hot. Because it's heavy work, drawing all that water up. And early morning, the place would have been buzzing. There'd have been a crowd of people getting the water. The men would have gone out to see to the fields, look after the animals. The children would be playing with their grandparents, and their grandparents would be teaching them things. And the women would have gone to get the water. And there'd be a little bit of chit-chat, a little bit of talking, a little bit of ho-ho-ho. And they'd be having fun. But she doesn't get up that early. It's a sure sign of depression, isn't it, when you can't get out of bed on a morning. And we're not talking about, oh, I can't get out till 7:10 instead of 7:05. We're talking about she can't get out of bed till 11. She gets out of bed. She goes to get the water. She's a very isolated lady. Nobody wants to speak to her. The women don't want to speak to her because they know what sort of woman she is. And the men daren't speak to her because if their wife finds out, she's isolated, a bit depressed, worried about when a man's going to leave her. Every man she's ever known has used her and abused her, probably since her childhood. She arrives and the last thing she needs is somebody else being there. She can't face people. It suits her going in midday because there's nobody else there. They're all having their siesta. She doesn't want to face people. And you don't when you're depressed, do you? You don't want to face people. So here's this woman. Life has dealt her every bad card. And she hasn't picked well. And she's been abused and she's suffered. And she sits there, she arrives there, ready to get the water. And there's a man there. And worse than a man, there's a Jew. Now, Jesus was a Jewish man, and she is a Samaritan woman. And you have to understand, the Jews and the Samaritans didn't like each other. I mean, you think Yorkshire and Lancashire, there's a bit of tension there.